Well, I knew about this abbey of Regina Laudis that was in Connecticut. And when I moved to Connecticut in the very end of 1981 to become the editor of a secular paper up here, I knew that the abbey was in Litchfield County, Connecticut. The paper was called the Litchfield County Times. But I knew that the abbey was here because I'd always known about this abbey. And so, of course, one of the first things I did with a wonderful young photographer was to get out there to see if we could do a story. And I tell that in the book about how they were very nice to me, and they said, well, Antoinette, first we have to get to know you, then we have to get to respect you and trust you, maybe in about 8 years. And I did a lot of stories about the Abbey, but I didn't do the one I really wanted to do until 8 years later, just like they said. And I respected them so much because they were all wonderful professional women. And Mother Benedict, she had been a medical doctor, and of course I'd been a pre-med student, so I was very interested in that. You know, we got along so very well. So as I say, I did many stories about the Abbey, and then they had a lot of problems. There were people who'd had a couple of bad experiences, whatever it was, as that's in the book. So it was a troubling time. Meanwhile, my son Peter had died, and where do you go to get any kind of hope and consolation when something like that happens? And the Abbey, they were always there to welcome me. And then again, 2 years later, when my son John and his wife, were murdered, that's where I could go for my peace, and I could go and I could stay as long as I needed to. They were always there for me. And unexpectedly, the Lady Abbess asked me if I would be willing to be interviewing her to do her life story. And I knew a little bit about her life story, but I was so honored. And so I worked for several years doing this because, she wasn't sure. First she wanted it as a biography, and then she wanted it as an autobiography, and then she thought, no, maybe we better go back and do it a biography. And I went back and forth. But then she really kind of communicated to me that she didn't want the book to come out in her lifetime, So I kind of gave everything to Mother Dolores, who's she's now the prioress there, the former actress. And I said, look, here is everything. I gave her a suitcase of tapes. She sat in on all the interviews, by the way. Mother Dolores, she is wonderful. I said, someday you'll have a nun here who's going to want to do the biography, and you've got everything here. So I gave it all to them because it was always understood. I mean, I had said that this, if it ever came out to a book, would be to benefit the Abbey, not to benefit me, but to benefit the Abbey financially, if it could be too, Then, much to our surprise, the way the Lady Abbess worked it, about 3 or 4 days after she died, Mother Dolores gets a call from someone at Ignatius Press, and the first thing he said is, do you have anything in writing on the Lady Abbess? And she said, do we? He said, we have a whole book. And he said, who wrote it? And she said, Antoinette Bosco. Well, my name is well known in the Catholic press. So he said, by goodness, have her send a proposal. So within a few months, we had a contract. We were so happy about this because we really, truly believed that it was Mother Benedict up in heaven who said, okay, now it's all right. Now we can do the book. She was a very modest woman, and she was a brilliant, brilliant woman. Suffered a great deal. She had a lot. When you are in a position like she is, where you start something very special, you do get people who are jealous of you, and you get some enemies, and she had a few. But for the most part, people love her. And the association I've had with the Abbey ever since, of course, I mean, I've had it all these years. There's so many wonderful people who come, and they're very well loved. It's a wonderful place. And they've got about 37, I think it is now, women, nuns there. It's a vibrant community. And it's something that she started. Well, no, I don't think anything in the long run is really a coincidence in life. I gave a talk to a big group of Catholic women in Worcester, Massachusetts in the fall, and they asked me to do something about is God there for us, And what I did was I actually talked about all the different ways that God gives us a hand. See, I think that you have to be open to this, but I think that all through your life, if you really, truly put your hand out, God is there to take your hand. The very fact that I left the university, I had my tenured position and a good income and everything at my university. I had my house on Long Island. I got out of they had a new guy come in who was really awful, and he was making my life a little bit miserable, because he was very jealous of me. I had a lot of, he'd say, everybody here likes you. You've been building your own PR firm. And I said, no, isn't it possible that's because I'm just fair with everybody, they like me? But by the way, the guy was fired, a few months after I left. But I said to my secretary that one day, I said, in my life, every time something is going to happen that's better, I get an unexpected phone call. And about a day later, I got an unexpected phone call from one of my own sons who was getting his internship in, he's a therapist at the NYU Medical Center. And the woman he worked with, it was her husband, this very wealthy man, who was starting this newspaper in Connecticut. And he couldn't find anybody to be a good editor. My son was always bringing in stuff that I wrote, And so she said to him, well, why don't you talk to Frank Bosco's mother, So, Frank called me and said, Mom, why don't you just go in and see him? And my first reaction was, I got a good job here, I can bear with this guy. Why am I? But I was going into New York anyway on a project for the university. It turned out it was a block away from this man's office, so I did. I went in, and he offered me the job on the spot. I don't, you might say I was crazy to do such a radical move, but it was the right thing. And see, I believe that it was the Lord Jesus all the while was letting me know that there was something better in store for me. And what was better was that by coming to Connecticut, I was close to my hometown of Albany, New York, and I know an hour and a half to 2 hours away at the most, and my father, whom I idolized, had gotten ill. And so at least because I moved to Connecticut, I was able to spend a lot of time with my father in the last few years that he lived. So, see, God gives us a hand. That's what I think. Even, and then again, Litchfield County and the Abbey and all, God was giving me a hand that it was time for my life to change, to be better for me. And that's what I think coincidences are. I really think that they're really God incidences, Well, for some people, a job is a job is a job, you know what I mean? But for me, as I told you why I started writing and everything, it never was just a job. I wanted to, quote, change the world, like Father Keller. He wrote that, you can change the world. I mean, I can still hear him. And I've been, interestingly enough, when the book I wrote against the death penalty came out, the Christophers, which was founded by Father Keller, they gave me a Christopher Award. Isn't that something? It was because of Father Keller starting the Christophers that I became a writer. And then, decades later, I get a Christopher Award. Does God give us a hand? I think so. For me, truth and faith were the complete motivations for why I got into writing. And that's the kind of writing I still do. I do. I really, they're all, most of my books have been, in one way or another, spiritual books. The only one that, isn't probably was one I did on, my son Peter had written a book on World War I before he died, and I worked with him on it a few years ago. The publisher wanted to put all of their war books out in new editions. They offered me the opportunity to redo Peter's book and bring, add more stuff to it and all of that. And in order to keep Peter's name on the book, I did it. So that's the only one that's not, almost specifically a spiritual book, The rest of them are. So that I feel as if I've been true to the motivation I had that helped me get into writing, to try to spread the truth about everything from religion to politics and life and marriage and children and everything. I've tried to make it as honest and truthful as I can, And with the book I wrote after the murders, which is by the Maryknoll publishers, Orbis, on choosing mercy, a mother of murder victims pleads to end the death penalty. That book has piles and piles of the research I had done, in the 60s and the 70s. I was a human rights commissioner on Long Island because I believe in human rights, and I had worked so much with the prison industry there and everything. But I hear it was a chance to really, really do the book about what it means to be a person of faith when you have to deal with murder. So to answer your question, I really do think that that's been the motivation of all my writing is truth and faith. Because, you can write for sensationalism or, whatever, for politics, and politics should have truth in it, of course. you can write for other reasons, but I stuck really with the religious press for the most part, because I was an editor of a secular paper for 20 years, but I did so much also that was about truth and justice. So I don't know. That's the answer I can give you. For me, crucially important.